Hello everyone, Sam here, and we gotta talk about Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is the inaugural episode of my show titled Buried by Burroughs. This is going to, as the name implies, largely focus on Edgar Rice Burroughs' work. And later, after I've read a fair amount of Edgar Rice Burroughs, focus on stories written by other authors that use Burroughs' characters. But for the foreseeable future, this is going to focus on Edgar Rice Burroughs' own work. So we'll be focusing on him for the foreseeable future. And I wanted to start this series because it had kind of been in my mind for the last couple of months. In fact, even when I started this BookTube channel back in December of last year. And the main reason was that I'd kind of been dabbling with Burroughs for the last year and a half, maybe 2 years. But I hadn't really jumped into him. I'd sort of been focused on other things. And I decided that, okay, I need to finally step forward and get into Burroughs. Just because, as I'll talk about it in a little bit, I just managed to get a lot of his material for relatively cheap prices. A bunch of Burroughs books somehow fell into my lap for virtually no money. I'll explain how excuse me, I'll explain how that happened, but for now, just know that Burroughs has been on my radar for a while, and I decided, well, I have a BookTube. Why not talk about his stories? So that's why I've started Buried by Burroughs, and that's the main goal for this series, to focus on Edgar Rice Burroughs' works. Now, one of the main reasons I wanted to focus on Burroughs is simply because, as someone very interested in literature and pulp fiction, Edgar Rice Burroughs is a huge figure in that field, both historically and artistically. Because he wrote for the pulps for several decades. He created several well-known characters. And that was kind of the interesting thing about Burroughs, which was that his work was not just important to pulp literature, but to several other fields, like comics, film, even a bit of television. But he's very important in the wider American popular culture, so I really wanted to check him out for that reason, simply to see how he influenced a lot of other creators. And the other reason I was interested in Burroughs is that, growing up, I was always of the opinion, okay, he wrote, two stories. He wrote space stories and he wrote jungle stories. Because, the only characters I really knew about were John Carter and Tarzan. And it is true, he did write a fair amount of outer space adventures and jungle adventures. But he actually wrote a very wide variety of genres. In my notes, I wrote down a list of ones that the different genres he did. And, there's the outer space adventures and the jungle adventures, but I also wrote down he did westerns, he did lost world tales, he did crime stories, he did historical adventures, he did science fiction, he did romances, he even did dystopian fiction. So he covered a wide breadth of genres, a lot of them science fiction and fantasy, but some of them more grounded genres. So he was not a one-trick pony. He did not just do one genre and become known purely for that genre. He did a whole lot of other work. So I'm always interested in writers like that who branch out of what most people consider their normal genre and actually do a whole lot of different genres. I think that's very admirable from a writing perspective and a creativity perspective. So that really interested me in his work. The other thing that really captured my attention about him was that a lot of pulp writers of that era were not really successful outside of pulp fiction in regards to their creations. Because you read a lot about certain pulp writers who just did not seem to get the success that other pulp writers had. You know, not everybody was Max Brand, where they were getting movies made of their westerns or, you know, any of these other creators. In fact, we know a lot of famous pulp writers from the day nowadays who were more successful today after they were dead than when they were alive. The ones that people often think of is like H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, you know, the typical pulp writers who were enjoyed in their day but not fully respected until after they passed. But Burroughs was extremely well known in his day, and he was also one of the major pulp writers who understood the importance of capitalizing on his creation, because he famously merchandised his creations like Tarzan, especially Tarzan. And, you know, when Burroughs was alive, he was handing out his creations to be adapted into other media. You know, there were comics, there were films, there were radio shows, and tons of other adaptations of his works. And Burroughs was kind of I wouldn't say that he was necessarily the first, but he was definitely one of the biggest pulp writers to understand how having your characters present in other forms of media can be very advantageous to you, not just from a commercial standpoint, but from a cultural standpoint. And obviously Tarzan is probably the most well-known one, but he did have other comics of his creation done, and there were other adaptations done, not just after Burroughs had passed, but when he was still alive. So he was someone who really understood that idea of getting your creations into different mediums that maybe you didn't necessarily create them initially for, but they could be adapted into these different mediums. So he's actually very important in terms of authorial, I guess you could say, commercialization. He knew how to get his works out of not just the pulp magazines, but into like the cinemas or the radio stations or the comic books. So he's very important in that regard. And probably the major reason I became interested in him was the more I researched about him, the more I realized how influential he was on multiple different writers from multiple different genres. There's a publisher named DMR Books. They have this series about the writers who influenced sword and sorcery, because they're very much focused on sword and sorcery fiction. And they actually mentioned in one of their blog posts that Edgar Rice Burroughs was actually hugely influential on sword and sorcery. Because the father of sword and sorcery, Robert E. Howard, apparently was a big fan of Burroughs. He had several of his books. And I was actually just reading Tarzan of the Apes, and one of the lines in this book that was talking about the foibles of civilization and the the beauty of the primitive life Tarzan led. I was reading that and going, that sounds like a line from Robert E. Howard. That seems like that's something that would be in a Conan story. And DMR Books, their blog post talked about how, yeah, Howard was hugely influenced by Burroughs, and a ton of other fantasy and sword and sorcery authors were influenced by him. So he has a big hold on fantasy. But he was also hugely influential with science fiction. An author I talked about recently, Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury was a huge Edgar Rice Burroughs fan. There was actually a panel at last year's Pulp Fest. I believe it was by Garen Roberts. And he talked about how Ray Bradbury was totally fixated on a lot of Edgar Rice Burroughs' work. So even science fiction authors are heavily influenced by him. And even cinematic and television writers were influenced by him. Apparently both George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry enjoyed certain elements of Burroughs' work. Supposedly John Carter, The Princess of Mars, and a lot of the John Carter stories influenced Star Wars. I'm not sure how it influenced Star Trek. Maybe there was another one of the space stories that I don't know about, but apparently Gene Roddenberry was influenced by Burroughs in some way. So lots of science fiction writers and creators were influenced by him. Even the couple of westerns that Burroughs did. Supposedly there was a Western writer named, what's his name? Patrick Deeren, who was heavily influenced by one of Edgar Rice Burroughs' westerns and took up writing westerns for that. So he just has this huge influence that you don't really see many people talk about, but when you look at the creators who came after the 1950s or who were starting to come up in the 1950s, you start to see, oh yeah, there were a ton of people influenced by him. I think even that fantasy writer, I wrote down Michael Moorcock, the Elric of Melna Benet writer. He was apparently hugely influenced by Burroughs too. So he just has this huge influence among multiple different writers. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm real curious to see what this guy wrote, that so many people were intrigued and enthralled by his work. So yeah, just hearing about all this year and a half to 2 years, I was like, okay, I should check out and see what he's all about. Now, I did a little digging into Burroughs' biography, both from different sources and also some things other Edgar Rice Burroughs fans had told me. And he actually had a very interesting life story leading up to his writing career. And because Burroughs, interesting from every biography I've checked out, Burroughs did not set out to be a writer. He was born in Chicago in, what was the year? 1875. And he originally was aiming to be a soldier because he went to the Michigan Military Academy. He apparently tried to get into West Point but couldn't get in. He got into the Michigan Military Academy. And he was sent out to Arizona to join the U.S. Cavalry. And Arizona wasn't a state at this point. It was still the Arizona Territory. And he was in the United States Cavalry for 2 years. But his career was cut short because he got diagnosed with some sort of heart issue. And he was discharged from the Army for health reason. And so this guy who had spent several years trying to be a soldier suddenly doesn't have the profession he was aiming to get into. And so he starts working like a bunch of different jobs. I actually had to write down all these jobs because he had such a varied amount. The ones I know about is that at one point he was a cowboy. He worked on, I think it was his brother's ranch as a cowboy. He was also at one point a gold miner. He worked in a battery factory. And then he was a railroader. And then I wrote this one down because this was a weird occupation. He was a, quote, pencil sharpener wholesaler. And what a wholesaler is basically they're a salesman for a product, but they don't sell it directly to the customer. They sell it to the retailers who will sell it to customers. So apparently he was a wholesaler for pencil sharpeners, which is a weirdly specific occupation, but it's the one he had. And apparently that was one of his more stable careers, because I think I read somewhere he had it for like several years. That was actually one of his more stable occupations. And he had a whole bunch of other business ventures that he tried to do and had middling success with, or just no success at all, supposedly. And so by the time he's in his mid-30s, he's married. He has 2 children. And the story goes that while Burroughs was doing one of these odd jobs that aren't, it's a living, but it's not a terribly great living. Supposedly Burroughs decides he wants to write for pulp magazines. Partially because he thought that everything that was being published in pulps at the time was utter dreck. That it was no good. And he's like, I can write better than that. And so he decides to back up his words and start writing for the pulps. And so in 1912, he'd spent some time writing out his ideas and finding a publisher who would publish them. Eventually he gets 2 stories published in 1912. The first is Under the Moons of Mars, which was later changed into A Princess of Mars, and Tarzan of the Apes. And both of these debut in 1912, and they were both very successful in the pulp magazines. I believe they were both published in the All Story. But they're big enough deals. He gets a fair amount of money for them, and they jumpstart his writing career. And he makes a living from writing from the era on out. And at this point, he was about 30. The age I looked up was he was 36 when these were published. And that to me is actually kind of surprising, because when I was reading this, I was always under the impression that Edgar Rice Burroughs had been like a lot of writers. He'd gone to college, came out of the university, and, had gotten his first big story published when he was like 25 or 26. But no, he was actually, like I said earlier, not aiming to be a writer, and he didn't get any of his he might have gotten some small stories published at one point, but his big writing with Under the Moon of Mars and Tarzan of the Apes were the first really big stories he had. And he did this at the age of 36. He was not a strapping young man who was stepping out ready to write. This was a guy who kind of fell into the pulp writing element. So that's kind of interesting to see that he managed to get that kind of success at an age that many people wouldn't think a writer would pop out. So, because of this success, he goes on writing dozens more stories. Some of them novels, others short story collections. But he writes and writes, and he becomes one of the wealthiest pulp writers ever. He died a millionaire in 1950. And he was just, during that period when he was around, just an absolutely huge presence. And even into the years up past his death, several decades later, he was hugely influential. So he had a more interesting life story than I thought he had. I focused mainly on the lead up to his first two novels, but yeah, that was very interesting to see that he actually had a somewhat unusual life before he got into pulp. So that was another thing that kind of interested me. The more I read about him, go, oh yeah, this guy actually had a bit of a unique life story. So you can sort of see why a man with those kind of experiences would have an imaginative mind. So I want to talk about how I kind of got into Burroughs, because it was kind of a weird journey in of itself for me. And to start with, my familiarity with Burroughs was fairly minor, especially growing up. Because, when I was growing up, my exposure to Burroughs, even though I read a lot as a kid, it was not really literature that I was exposed to Burroughs. It was always film adaptations. Because like a lot of 90s kids, I watched the Disney animated Tarzan film. And that was kind of my introduction to Tarzan as a character. And, when I was... it would have been when I was 13 or 14, the John Carter movie came out. And, I saw the thing of, oh, it's by Edgar Rice Burroughs. It's like, okay. I'm not sure I even watched that movie all the way through. I think I've seen it in bits and pieces. But that was kind of my familiarity with him. Like, he just was not talked about much in the 2000s and 2010s when I was really reading a lot and when I was a young man. But I started getting interested in Burroughs when I started getting interested in pulp fiction. Because if you've seen my video about The Shadow, you know that I got into The Shadow in the early 2020s during the pandemic. And that kind of led me to dipping into more of the other pulp characters that were created in pulp fiction. And I started getting really interested in jungle pulp stories, particularly with this one character called Kagor, who was essentially a Tarzan knockoff, but I was interested in his stories. And I was also starting to get interested in jungle comics again. I say again because when I was a young boy, I did like some jungle comics that I'd read. I can't remember the name of them, but I vaguely remembered them. And I was like, well, I kind of want to check out some other jungle comics. And so I'm getting interested in these jungle comics and these jungle pulp stories. And I decided, you know what, I really need to read the Tarzan stories, because even though I hadn't read them, I knew, okay, a lot of these stories are taking from those Tarzan tales. And so I was like, okay, I got to read the Tarzan tales to at least understand what well these other jungle pulp stories are pulling from. So I would say about 2 years ago, I joined a Facebook group called For the Love of Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I did that mostly to learn more about Burroughs' work, because a lot of people post there about Burroughs' work, but also the works that were influenced by him. And so I joined that, and a lot of folks there were very helpful in talking about Burroughs' life and his characters. And last year when I was at Pulp Fest, I bought some of Edgar Rice Burroughs' work there. The ones I remember are The War Chief and The Cave Girl. I think I bought others, but I can't think of which ones they were just now. And while I was there, the Burroughs Bibliophiles had a stand there, and you could sign up to join them, and I did. And I read a little bit of the Bibliophiles, not newsletter, but their magazine. It was a very cool and interesting discussion in the articles I read there. And so I had all those, and I came back from Pulp Fest, and I would say about a month later, I was visiting my local used bookstore, and the proprietor had these several big boxes of science fiction books, because apparently there was a local sci-fi fan who was downsizing his collection or whatever, and he just brought it to this used bookstore for the proprietor to give out. And I checked the contents of these boxes, and a lot of them were Edgar Rice Burroughs stories. That's actually how I got my copies here of Princess of Mars and Tarzan of the Apes, because there were a lot of the Tarzan stories there in this Ballantine edition. And there were a lot of the Burroughs stories in there from, who was this one? Del Rey. And they were absolutely stocked with them. Like most, I would say about 60% of the Burroughs Tarzan stories were in that box, and about 90% of the John Carter and the Barsoom series were in there, and a whole bunch of other Burroughs works too. And I decided, okay, I'm gonna buy all these, because I kind of took it as a sign. It says like, all right, you're talking about Burroughs, you join the Burroughs groups, and now you see all these Burroughs books dropped right in front of you. So I said, all right, I'll buy them. And they were great deals, because I bought them for about $2 or $3 a book, which I later learned was kind of a steal with these editions, because a lot of people buy these editions much higher. To be fair, these ones were kind of beat up, but I didn't really care. I was more interested in the words, and the covers were relatively unblemished, so I was happy. But yeah, so I was like, oh wow, I got all these. I should really start digging into Burroughs now. But you know, I have a problem with procrastination, so they kept getting pushed back. I kept doing other things. But then a couple months ago, on that, after I had started this booktube, one member of the For the Love of Edgar Rice Burroughs group on Facebook, he sent an announcement saying, hey, I have this huge collection of Edgar Rice Burroughs. I want to clear them out for some space. Anyone who wants them can have them for free. And he happened to live not all that far from me. So I was like, okay, I think this might be another sign. So I asked him if I could have them. He said, sure. And I went there. And he had this huge box about 3 feet tall, just filled with all these Edgar Rice Burroughs paperback editions. Often several different editions of the same book. And I was like, oh man, this is real cool. And I said, right after that happened, I said, all right, I procrastinated too long. I've been given every single sign that, hey, you should read Edgar Rice Burroughs because you've gotten the books real cheap and you've even gotten them for free. So it's kind of like, no, you should you take advantage of it now. So I decided, all right, shortly after that happened, I'm going to finally dig into Edgar Rice Burroughs. And decided I actually went and made a list. I actually have the list somewhere. Oh, here it is. I actually wrote a list down of ERB reading order, and it was you can't see it on my camera, but it's all of his works with the year listed and the works that were done in that year. And by done that year, I mean when they were first started publishing in the pulp magazines. I was going by their publication in pulp magazines, not by the hardcover book releases, because the hardcover book releases would sometimes release out of order. Like the Tarzan books were published before A Princess of Mars, even though A Princess of Mars had been published first in the pulp magazines. So I wrote down their all of his works in roughly chronological order of their publication. So that was a very cool thing for me, and that kind of cemented me go, okay, I finally have a good plan for how to finally get into Burroughs. So my plan for Buried by Burroughs is to read the books year by year, trying to read 2 or 3 a month, and read each group done in that year once a month. So like 1912, the Princess of Mars and Tarzan of the Apes were published in pulp magazines, so I read these two for the past month. And this month, not sure I'd get to all of them, but there were 5 stories that were started appearing in 1913. One of them actually was The Monster Men. But yeah, so I'm going to be reading each month 1 year of Edgar Rice Burroughs' works. Now, some of them are going to be split up because on that list I had, there were a couple years where Burroughs was releasing like several stories a year, and it would be kind of overwhelming to read all of them in 1 month. So some of them will be split up, but generally I'm going to be trying to read 1 year's worth of work from Burroughs per month. So that's the main goal. And later this week, I'm going to be doing reviews of A Princess of Mars and Tarzan of the Apes, because I read these two last month, because they were the works published in 1912. So I'm going to work forward from there, and that's essentially it. I'm going to work forward through Burroughs' work each year going on. I also wanted to do this because I really like the idea of reading Romer's, for Sax Romer, that review show I have. I was trying to read things in order because I kind of wanted to see how Sax Romer developed as an author. And that's kind of what I'm doing here with Burroughs. I want to see how he develops as an author and see how his work changes from his younger writing to his older writing. So that's going to be very cool. And my hope, I don't know if this will happen, but my hope is that I will finish reading Burroughs' known output within the next 3 years. That's a bit of a lofty goal because he did write a fair amount, but I'm trying to get it done by this time in 2029. I don't know if that'll happen, but it's the goal I'm aiming for, and I hope I can reach it. So you can expect a lot of Burroughs on this channel for the next couple of years. Hopefully you guys will enjoy that. So that's all I'm going to say now. I have some I've already written my reviews for Apprentice of Mars and Tarzan of the Apes, and those will be coming out this weekend. But yeah, this is what I'm doing, and I hope you guys enjoy it when I start putting the reviews out. In the description, I'm going to link a couple of different links. One is the link to the For the Love of Edgar Rice Burroughs, that Facebook group. If you're really into Burroughs, they're a great resource and a great community. Also going to have a link to DMR Books and their Edgar Rice Burroughs articles, because they did a lot of really cool Edgar Rice Burroughs articles over the several years they've been around. So you should definitely check them out too. So yeah, that's my video. I hope this gets some of you excited for a review of Edgar Rice Burroughs' work, and I hope that I enjoy them as much as I've enjoyed these first two Burroughs stories. So thank you very much for listening, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.